I'm so deeply honored and grateful that you're joining me for a fresh approach to painting, Gateway to the Inner Artist. Bless Your Heart 1, Undersea Habitats. We're going to use unique tools to create an underwater garden or coral reef, and it's extremely fun. We're using a 16 by 20 cotton duck canvas, and we've painted the entire background a nice bright orange. The first thing we're going to do is put in our sky. Pick up some brilliant orange. I'm using a large angled brush to do that with, and you could look on your tools list to see which specific brush that is. And I'm going to paint in, about 2 or 3 inches of sky. I've put enough blue, picked up a little too much brilliant blue on my brush. No problem, I'm going to wipe that off, and I'm going to pick up my white and finish my painting. Now my sky is blue on the left side, and it works its way over to a light white on the right side. Probably would have made sense if I started with the white instead of the brilliant blue, but this will show you that you can accomplish anything with acrylic paint. So there are no mistakes. And there's my sky. Now I don't have to be so definite as to where my horizon line is, because in the end I'm going to have a blurred horizon line. Now I'm going to put my beach in. I'm going to pick up some Naples yellow and start placing it just under where the sky is. My paint is wet, so I'm not going to touch that paint right now. Just going to come up to it but not meet that blue. I'm going to continue putting in my Naples yellow beach, and I've put in my straight line. Now I'm going to divert from a straight line and place the Naples yellow down below that line so I don't have too many rigid horizontal lines. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling in more Naples yellow to create my background. And I know that where I have the one color here, I need to put a touch of that same color in other areas. So I'm going to strategically place some of that Naples yellow, and I'm cleaning my brush off, so I'm being frugal at the same time. It's important to touch whatever colors you're using around your canvas. It gives you more of a consistent finished composition if you do that. Okay, I think I'm not going to pick up any more Naples yellow. I'm going to move to my middle area, and that is where I incorporate all these wonderful colors that I have to work with. So I'm moving into my middle ground while I wait for my sky to dry. That's the fun part of this painting. You can keep moving. I'm going to mix a little portrait pink with my blue violet. That's giving me a shadow color, not so vivid of a blue. I'm just going to touch this to see, is that shadowy enough, and it isn't, so I'm going to add a little more pink to that. There, that's the color I'm wanting. All right, so I'm going to put in these mid-tones. Now, what I mean by mid-tone is I'm going to use this blue again. So I'm making it not quite as bright of a color because it's going to be in the background. It's going to be in that middle ground area versus being in the foreground where I'm going to use my pure color. All right, so I'm just going to tap in. I can touch my Naples yellow, no problem. I want my colors to mix and meet. So I want my And just step back and assess. Does that look light? Do you see the orange shining through? Does it touch your beach? And the answer is yes to all of the above. I'm going to pick up some of my magenta, add it to that same mix. Again, trying to make my magenta a little bit lighter than the color I'm going to use in the foreground. So now I'm going to add this, and right now it looks like a bright color, but when I start using the magenta in its purest form, in its purest color, that will make this area look toned down. Okay. And then again, I pull it right down. Pick up some more of my blue and pink combination and just pull that down. I'm watching my shapes as well. This is all going to look like flowers. Pick up a little bit of white and actually mix it on the canvas. So this is making yet another tone, another hue. There we go. And so now my middle ground has introduced these 4 more colors. I'm going to switch to my angled brush because this angled brush is a little firmer than the wash brush that I was using. Because it's firmer, it's going to give me more shape to my flowers. I'm going to pick up some of the blue violet and I'm going to move my brush around. Now see how I'm moving it? I'm using the point of my brush, I'm using the bottom of my brush, and I'm just tapping. But by tapping, I'm forming a flower. I'm going to do that with my purple over here. And I'm going to keep in mind that my sun is really, or my light is really coming straight down. It's slightly angled to the right, but mainly that light is coming and it's coming straight down through the ocean and hitting these flowers. So I'm going to put in my purple flowers, and this is again where you're going to be creative. You're going to put your clumps of color. I'm going to call them clumps of color because that's what they are. They're clumps of color with a bit of shape, and that's what makes interesting flowers under the undersea coral reef that we're creating. All right. What I do on this side, I'm going to bring in some purple over here, just move around my canvas and fill up areas, leaving some orange, but I'm going to fill in areas in odd shapes. Some are oval, some are round, some have hairy edges. Just be creative with that. Also notice that the flowers that you create or the clumps that you create will be smaller as they go into the middle ground and then larger as they go into the foreground. So to evaluate this, you've got your medium tones of these same colors you're using in this middle ground. You have the dark vivid color in the front, pure color that you're working with right off the palette. And that is all adding to the interest of your composition. And then this little area up here in the middle ground has smaller shapes. Try to make shapes with interesting edges. I've let my flowers dry because when acrylic dries, it dries darker. So I've got a true understanding of what my painting looks like to this point because it is nice and dry. So next step is to pick up some white, and I'm going to place some more white into the edges of these flowers and give them more shape. Now remember, in our middle ground we don't have as much shape as we will in our foreground, but we do have some shape. So I'm just going to give these flowers some shape so that they actually look like flowers. I don't want them to be realistic flowers because we want to leave a lot up to the viewer's imagination. That makes the viewer feel like they're more a part of the painting. And so in this area, I'm going to, because I don't want to use just the stark white, I'm going to put some red on my brush, and I'm going to make some shapes here in this red area. And see how I can work with my brush to actually create real shape, real defined shape. Because why am I doing that? Because I'm in the foreground. I'm in the front of the painting. And the front of the painting definitely has more shape than the back of the painting. So it goes in graduation. You have a more defined shape in the front, you have less in the middle of the area, and you have very distant blurred edges on the background of the painting, which is the top of the painting or the sky in this particular one. So you see how just doing another layer of shape over the colors that I have, whatever's on my brush, I'm going to do. Add a little yellow. Now I'm not going to be sloppy with this, but I'm going to be free and loose with this. Okay, and then I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. Switch to a soft brush, add a little bit of white, and I'm going to finish out my horizon line. See how I'm doing this? I'm just adding in a horizontal movement. I'm left-handed, so I'm doing this with my left hand. Of course, you would be doing it with your right hand, and you're going to have a little different mark because the marks are your personality. Just like your signature is part of your personality, your mark making while you're painting is part of your personality too. Now, by just adding a little white to this painting, I have tied in the beach, the Naples yellow beach, with the sky. I like that. I like how it looks, and it also gives me impression that that is ocean. I'm going to tap, since I have some white on my brush, I'm going to put some white in my sky on this side, because remember I said my sun is coming straight down, but I also it's coming straight down but not exactly in the middle of the painting. That would make for a boring painting, so I've moved my light a little bit to the right, and how I'm demonstrating that is I'm adding just a little more white to my sky. So now we're going to use our unique tools, and using unique tools combined with painting allows our artist to expand. So what we're using right now are the Liquitex splatter brushes. They come in two sizes. One is round, the other is flat. There are some other types of splatter brushes that you can work with, but these are the two that we're going to use for this painting. Now, historically, some people have taken the end of a broom, bound them together, and created something that looks like this. The good part of this, because it's plastic, the bristles spread out easily, and we're going to use a motion like this to splatter the paint in a controlled area. So you aren't just making a big mess. And let's hope that we don't get paint all over your room. So learning to use the unique tool is a skill all in itself. So it's advisable to put a drop cloth down because you might get some spray of paint over your table or onto the floor. So we're going to try to be very controlled. So I dip my Liquitex splatter brush in water and get it nice and wet. And then I'm going to get some paint on it. I'm using my white. And see, that's about how much you have on the brush, or splatter brush we call it. And what you want to do is put your hand under the brush and splatter. Now if it doesn't come off, now that's coming off in a glob, we don't want that. We need more water. The more wet your brush is, the larger your splatters will be. I'm being very careful here because I don't want to get it all over. Again, move my bristles so that they're looser. I know if I hit this really hard, I'm going to get a lot of splatters, but there it goes. Took a little bit to get it to start coming off the brush, but look how beautiful that is. Now a good idea would be, that's coming off exactly the way I want it, but if you'd like to take a paper towel and cover up the sky so that if you do get splatters extending beyond where you want them to end up, you won't have it in the sky. But don't worry, if you get a little bit on the sky, you just wipe it off. So there we have it with the white. Now I'm going to move from my white. I purposely put my white on first, and what I want to do is just touch the canvas in a couple areas going towards the sky or water, and that's going to give me the illusion that the water is moving up, or those are bubbles. Those are a little bit thick. It's good that you're seeing this. Had a little too much water on my brush. I'm going to let those dry and just go at it again, and then I'll touch them up later with my brush, my regular brush. So now I'm going to touch some blue on my brush. And put in some splatters with the blue. And then I'm going to show you how to use this other brush. This one is flat, and it's going to give, I'm going to wet that up and dip it right into my blue, get enough blue on my brush, wet it again. Now the flat brush is going to give me, look, a whole different shape. I'm going to continue on with this and do all my colors. This is where you can be creative, take your time, make sure your splatters are exactly what you want them to be. Nice round circles are good, not blobs, but nice round circles. And continue until you have this middle area completely covered with bubbles. And then the next step is to put your grass in. So grass is always moving in the ocean. So I'm using an angled brush, and I'm going to move my brush in a squiggly pattern, and that creates the grass. Now I'm going to go all the way off the canvas and put in my dark shapes of seagrass. The sides are taller than the middle section. So maybe put in your two sides first. Now, it's good that you see this. You want your grass to come to a point. So you can continue a little bit, not go too far into the mid area, but you want to get your grass wider at the bottom and thinner at the top. Keep your brush wet. If you find that the paint's not coming off your brush, it means that you didn't have enough paint on your brush. All right, and so you could move right along that middle section, giving a little squiggle as you move your arm up the canvas, and that's going to give movement to your grass. And again, this is where your creativity comes in. Watch the shape of your grass. You want to get your darkest darks, so you're using hooker green and alizarin crimson. So I let my dark, rich grass dry, and now it's time to put the second layer of the grass on. So we'll take some hooker green and some yellow, and that's going to make a nice light green. And I'm going to carefully follow the pattern of the grass and go over those dark, moving shafts of grass that I've put in. That's going to give another dimension to the grass. There'll be another layer. Giving your grass depth. Don't cover it over completely. Just put this nice medium tone of green over the dark green. Now you're not done, because once you get all this grass in exactly the way you want it, you're going to splatter over it again with the splatter brush. So as you can see, this painting is done in layers. You've learned to use a splatter brush. You've learned to put in the bubbles so that the underwater coral looks like it's bubbling to the top. So continue with those layers until it's exactly the way you want it. So now we're ready to look and see if there are any more details that we need. We've got our middle ground area that has the neutral colors. We've got this foreground that's nice and bright. Our grass is in, and we went back after putting the grass in and splattered it one more time with the splatter brush. The reason we do that is because we want some of these bubbles on top of the grass and some of the bubbles underneath the grass. Why? Because you want the viewer to be mystified. You want them to wonder, well, what did the artist paint first? The grass or the bubbles? Another finishing touch that you can do with this painting is take a little bit of paint and a bubble and put a color right inside that white bubble. You don't want to do this too much, but it certainly adds a lot of interest when you do just some random bubbles, filling in the center of them with a contrasting color. So I've put some white bubbles with my splatter brush moving up towards the water in the sky, and I also decided to put some blue bubbles in as well. By using the different colors on the palette with the splatter brush, it adds a little more interest. Now, don't go crazy, because once you start doing this, you're going to be so excited you're just going to splatter, and then you'll have splatter all over your house and the painting. So I'm looking at my area where the Naples yellow meets the blue, and I'm feeling like there's too much of a sharp contrast. Since my painting is nice and dry, I'm going to pick up some white, and I am going to add some more lines to that area, and that's going to just blend them in. Wonderful.